Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into one of the most fundamental, yet often surprisingly complex aspects of being human, communication. We've pulled together an incredible stack of sources for this one. I mean, covering everything from ancient philosophy and how people grappled with communication literally thousands of years ago,
Yeah,
all the way to the nitty-gritty of modern digital interactions, and even how our own minds, shape what we hear and say. It's quite a journey.
absolutely. And our mission today really is to try and untangle some of these complexities, offer you a clearer roadmap, maybe highlight the most impactful concepts you can actually use right away. Because, as you said, communication isn't just talking or sending a text. It's this foundational human process. It truly begins with how you understand yourself, and then it just ripples outward into every interaction.
And honestly, you're going to have some serious aha moments listening to this, like
Yeah.
how communication models from decades ago still perfectly explain your tech glitches today. It's kind of wild. Or why a simple phrase can mean completely different things to different people. We'll also dig into how something as seemingly straightforward as listening, well, it's actually a deeply layered skill.
Oh, definitely. Influenced by everything from culture to gender.
Exactly.
And for anyone out there who thinks, good communicators are just born that way, well, we're about to bust that myth wide open. Our sources are pretty clear. Understanding these core fundamentals can dramatically improve how you connect with others, both personally and professionally.
Okay, so to really get a grip on communication today, we kind of have to look back, surprisingly far back, actually, because even millennia ago, you find stuff in classical Babylonian and Egyptian writings, even in Homer's Iliad.
Hmm.
People were already grappling with how our words shape things, shape human affairs.
Yeah, it wasn't just casual thought either. The systematic study started early. Take the Greeks, for instance. They needed to present their own cases in courtrooms, right? That necessity basically spurred the whole development of rhetoric.
Rhetoric, right. The art of persuasion.
Precisely. You had figures like Corax and his student Theseus way back in the 5th century BCE. They arguably developed the first communication theory focused entirely on courtroom speaking, and they introduced something we still hammer home today: message organization. You need an intro, a body, a conclusion.
Yeah.
Basic, but foundational.
And then came the big names. Aristotle, his teacher, Plato. They saw communication not just as a practical skill and art, but as something you could actually study. Aristotle specifically really saw it as key to democracy, how citizens participate.
Yeah, he framed it in terms of an orator crafting an argument for an audience, for the hearers. His goal for the speaker, it was about inspiring a positive image, getting the audience receptive to the message. He even wrote, and this is fascinating, rhetoric exists to affect the giving of decisions. He said the orator has to make the argument believable, sure, but also make himself look right and put the audience in the right frame of mind.
Wow. It's almost like ancient personal branding, isn't it?
Kind of. Fast forward quite a bit to the 20th century. You get Harold Lasswell's model from 1948. Came out of his work on political propaganda. He boiled communication down to 5 key questions. Who says what? In which channel? To whom? With what effect? Super concise.
It's pretty relevant, actually.
Very. And like Aristotle, it highlights the speaker, message, audience. Then Shannon-Weaver, they took it a step further. They had this more linear one-way process model: source, channel, receiver. But they also identified 3 levels where things can go wrong.
Yeah.
Technical problems like your internet connection drops during a call. Semantic problems, that's misunderstanding the meaning, like misreading the tone of an email. And effectiveness problems, basically, did the message achieve its goal?
So these frameworks from way back when, they're still explaining our everyday communication headaches.
Absolutely. They provide the essential building blocks for understanding pretty much every interaction you have, whether it's face-to-face or through a screen. It's enduring stuff.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. Because before we even talk to someone else, communication starts. Well, it starts inside us, with you. How you see yourself has this profound influence on how you communicate and how you react to others.
Yeah, it all begins with your self-concept. That's your image of who you are, your strengths, weaknesses, abilities, limitations as you perceive them, of course. And this self-concept isn't formed in a vacuum. It's shaped by how others see you or how you think they see you, by comparing yourself to others, by cultural messages, and by how you interpret your own actions and thoughts. It's dynamic.
And tied into that is self-awareness. Just knowing your own traits, your emotions, your typical behaviors. Our sources say this is absolutely basic to all communication. There's a great tool for this, the Johari window, if you heard of this. It divides yourself into 4 panes.
The open, blind, hidden, and unknown selves.
Exactly. So the open self is stuff you and others know your name, maybe your job, your hobbies. Pretty straightforward. But then there's the blind self. This is the stuff others see in you, but you're totally unaware of.
Like maybe you fidget when you're nervous or you interrupt people without realizing it.
Right. And a large blind self can really mess with accurate communication, can't it? Because you don't know how you're coming across.
Definitely. Which leads to the obvious question. How do you shrink that blind spot? How do you boost self-awareness? The sources suggest a few things. Actively listen to feedback from others, even if it's tough to hear. Intentionally share more about yourself, increasing your open self. Seek out information about yourself, maybe through introspection or even assessments. And interestingly, dialogue with yourself. Sort of check in with your own thoughts and feelings.
That makes sense. And it's not just about knowing yourself, but also valuing yourself. That's self-esteem, right? How much worth you think you have. And the encouraging part is you can work on this. You can challenge those self-destructive beliefs that hold you back. It's about self-worth, not arrogance.
And all of this self-concept, self-awareness, self-esteem feeds directly into perception, how we make sense of the world around us. Perception isn't passive. We don't just absorb reality. It's an active process. Our sources break it down into about 5 stages.
Okay, let's walk through them.
First, stimulation. Your senses pick something up. You see a new ad, you hear a siren. But even here, selection happens. Selective attention, you focus on things you think will meet your needs or interests. And selective exposure, you tend to seek out info that confirms what you already believe. We filter constantly.
Okay, so we've selected something, then what?
Stage 2, organization. Your brain tries to structure the information. It uses rules, mental blueprints called schemata, and learns sequences of action called scripts. Like you have a script for ordering coffee.
Got it. Makes things efficient.
Stage 3, interpretation evaluation. This is where you assign meaning. And it's highly subjective, influenced by your past experiences, your values, your mood, your expectations, everything.
So my interpretation could be totally different from yours, even if we saw the same thing.
Absolutely. Stage 4 is memory. You store your perceptions and your interpretations, not always perfectly. And stage 5 is recall. When you retrieve that memory, it's often reconstructed based on your existing schemata. It's not like playing back a video recording, it's more like rebuilding it.
Which explains why eyewitness accounts can vary so much.
Exactly. And this whole perception process leads to how we form impressions of other people, which is where some really interesting biases creep in.
Ah, yes, the biases, like the self-fulfilling prophecy. This one's fascinating.
It is. It's a prediction that comes true, basically, because you act as if it's already true.
So if I expect my new teammate to be unhelpful, I might act distant. They sense that, they become unhelpful, and boom, prophecy fulfilled.
Precisely. Then there's our implicit personality theory. These are our subconscious rules about which traits usually go together.
Leading to things like the halo effect.
Yep. If someone's friendly, we might automatically assume they're also intelligent and honest, even with no evidence. The flip side is the horns effect. One negative trait makes us assume others exist too.
We also get influenced by primacy recency effects. Does the first impression stick or the last thing we learned?
Right. And finally, attribution of control. We try to explain why someone behaved a certain way. Did they have control over it, or was it external factors?
Like, was my friend late because they're disorganized or because there was a huge accident?
Exactly. And we make errors here all the time. The self-serving bias, blaming failures on external factors but taking credit for success, and the fundamental attribution error.
Where we overestimate personality and underestimate the situation when judging others' negative behavior.
It's so easy to do. We see someone acting grumpy and think, what a grumpy person, not maybe they just got bad news.
Okay, so we've looked inward at the self and perception. Now let's pivot to the actual tools we use to connect the words themselves. Verbal messages. And just a quick clarification. Verbal means using words, spoken or written. Things like laughter or even though they're vocal, are technically nonverbal.
That's a key distinction. And probably the biggest principle here is that meanings aren't in the words themselves. Meanings are in people.
Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. Take a simple phrase, I love you. The meaning you assign to those words can change dramatically based on context, history, tone, who's saying it, discovering they said it to someone else yesterday. The words stay the same, but the meaning shifts because you shift.
Okay, I get that. Which
Mm,
also explains bypassing, right?
exactly. Bypassing is when people miss each other because they're using different words for the same thing, or more often, the same words for different things. Major source of misunderstandings.
And language works on two levels simultaneously. Denotative meaning
That's the dictionary definition. Relatively objective, stable.
and connotative meaning.
Ah, that's the emotional charge, the subjective association a word carries for you.
The example you gave earlier, migrant versus settler, same basic denotation, potentially, but vastly different connotations and feelings attached.
Absolutely, and some words are almost purely connotative. Our sources call them snarl words and purr words.
Snarl words being highly negative.
Right, like calling someone a moron. It doesn't really describe behavior, it just expresses the speaker's contempt.
And purr words are the opposite, highly positive, like she's an angel.
Exactly. Again, expresses feeling, not objective description.
So, given that meaning is so subjective and emotional, context must be hugely important.
Crucial. Meanings change drastically depending on the cultural context. How do you show respect? Or the gender context research often shows, for instance, differences in politeness strategies between men and women, though these are generalizations, of course.
Speaking of politeness, messages vary a lot in how direct they are.
Yes, politeness theory is interesting. A direct command like "get me coffee" is generally less polite than an indirect request like "would you mind grabbing me a coffee if you're going?"
Why the indirectness?
It helps people save face, both the speakers and the listeners. It softens the imposition and acknowledges the other person's autonomy. It shows you're aware of social rules.
Makes sense. And then there's assertiveness.
Right. Assertive communication is about expressing your needs and opinions respectfully, standing up for your rights, but without infringing on others. It aims for that I win, you win outcome.
Is it always the best approach?
Assertive people can choose non-assertiveness if they feel it's more appropriate, maybe to avoid hurting someone in a sensitive situation. But it's also culturally bound. Assertiveness is generally more valued in individualist cultures like the US compared to collectivist cultures where group harmony might be prioritized over individual expression.
That's a really important nuance.
Uh-huh.
And finally, something a bit less comfortable. Messages can deceive.
Yeah, lying is unfortunately common. Our sources define it as sending an intentional message, verbal or nonverbal, that you believe is untrue, specifically to mislead the receiver.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. We focus so much on speaking, on sending messages, but what about receiving them? Let's talk about listening. It seems simple, but it's actually incredibly difficult to do well.
It really is. And it's so much more than just hearing. It's this whole active process. Receiving, understanding, remembering, evaluating, and responding to messages, both the words and the nonverbal stuff.
And why is it so critical?
Oh gosh, where to start? It's vital for learning anything new, for building and maintaining relationships, for simply enjoying things like music or stories, for helping people, and even for influencing others. People respond positively to being genuinely heard. One source mentioned that attentive listening is linked to social acceptance, even popularity.
Okay, so how do we break down this complex process? You mentioned 5 stages.
Yep, 5 overlapping stages. First is receiving. This is the physical act of hearing, yes. But effective listening starts with focusing attention. Tuning in to both verbal and nonverbal cues, watching for feedback, actively trying to screen out distractions.
Step 1, pay attention. Got it. What's next?
Stage 2, understanding. This is where you grasp the speaker's meaning. Not just the literal words, but the thoughts and the emotional tone behind them. It means connecting what you're hearing to what you already know, trying hard to see things from their perspective, and asking clarifying questions if you're unsure. So if I understand correctly, you're saying.
Okay, understand their meaning. Then,
Stage 3, remembering. Crucially, what we remember is usually a reconstruction, not a perfect recording. To improve memory, especially moving info from short-term to long-term, the advice is focus intensely, organize the information logically, chunk related ideas together, unitize, and repeat key points back to yourself or the speaker.
focus, organize, unitize, repeat. Okay, stage 4.
Evaluating. This is where you judge the message, the speaker's credibility, their intent. But the key advice here is critical. Resist judging until you're sure you fully understand. Assume the speaker means well, try to distinguish facts from opinions or inferences, and be aware of your own biases creeping in.
That's hard. We'd love to jump to conclusions.
Very hard. And finally, stage 5, responding. This is your feedback to the speaker. It happens while they're talking, those little nahs, ices. Those are called back-channeling
Let them
cues.
know you're engaged.
Exactly. And it also happens after they finish speaking with your more considered verbal and nonverbal reactions. The goal should be supportive and honest feedback.
So given all those stages, what trips us up? What are the common barriers?
Lots of things. Obvious ones are physical distractions, noise, uncomfortable room, mental distractions, your mind wandering off to your to-do list. Our own biases and prejudices can filter what we hear. Lack of appropriate focus, maybe we're trying to multitask. And as we mentioned, premature judgment, deciding what someone means or whether they're right before they've even finished.
And it sounds like there isn't just one right way to listen all the time.
Definitely not. Effective listening is situational. You have to adapt. For example, sometimes you need empathic listening, really trying to feel with the other person, understanding their emotions alongside their thoughts, then comforting a friend. Other times, objective listening is more appropriate, focusing on the logic, the facts, the evidence, maybe in a debate or a technical briefing. It's about trying to see things from the speaker's viewpoint, avoiding offensive listening where you're just listening for ammo to attack them, and sometimes crucially, just listening to understand, not immediately jumping in to fix their problem.
That's a big one. Just listening. Okay, we absolutely cannot have this deep dive without talking about maybe the biggest influence on communication. Culture. Our sources define it so broadly. Everything that members of that group have produced and developed, their values, beliefs, artifacts, language, their ways of behaving and thinking, their art, laws, religion, and, crucially, their communication styles and theories.
It's pervasive, and what's key is that culture is transmitted through communication. It's learned, not genetic. This also helps clarify the difference between sex, the biological aspects, and gender. Gender refers to the social roles, the behaviors, the identity that a culture associates with being male or female. It's socially constructed and learned.
And we learn our culture through enculturation, right? Learning the culture we're born into.
Correct. And then there's acculturation, which is the process of learning the rules and norms of a different culture, one you weren't raised in. This can sometimes lead to assimilation, where your original culture gets modified.
Why is understanding culture's impact more important now than ever?
Several reasons, really. Changing demographics means societies are more diverse. There's generally increased sensitivity and awareness. Our economies are globally interconnected. And technology just collapses distances, forcing more intercultural interaction. Plus, communication competence itself is culturally defined. What worked perfectly in one culture might fail miserably in another.
Like the business meeting example, straight to business in the US versus relationship building first in Japan.
Exactly. So understanding these differences is key.
What are some of the major cultural dimensions our sources highlight?
Okay, a few big ones. First, individualism versus collectivism. Individualist cultures, like the US or UK, emphasize personal goals, achievement, uniqueness. Collectivist cultures, like many in Asia or Latin America, prioritize group harmony, loyalty, and fitting in. This affects everything from conflict style to self-promotion.
Then there's power distance.
Right. This is about how accepting a culture is of unequal power distribution. In high-power distance cultures like Malaysia, Mexico, there's a strong respect for authority, clear hierarchy, and maybe less challenging of superiors.
Whereas in low power distance cultures, US, Denmark, power is seen as more distributed, people might question authority more readily, and there's less formality between ranks.
Then you have high context versus low context cultures. This is huge for communication. High context cultures, Japan, South Korea, rely heavily on shared understanding, nonverbal cues, and the context itself. Meaning is often implied, not explicitly stated. They tend to be collectivist, and saving face is very important.
And low context cultures.
Like Germany or Canada, they put the meaning primarily in the explicit verbal message. Communication needs to be clear, direct, unambiguous. They tend to be individualistic, and things like written contracts are highly valued.
Okay, so you have individualism, collectivism, power distance, high-low context. Any others?
Yes, things like long-term versus short-term orientation. Does a culture focus on future rewards and saving, or on past, present, and quick results? And concepts like universalism versus exclusionism, treating everyone as individuals versus strong in-group preference. These all intertwine.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of. So, given all these potential pitfalls and differences, how do we actually get better at intercultural communication?
It really boils down to developing cultural sensitivity. It's an awareness of and respect for cultural differences. The practical advice includes educate yourself beforehand about the cultures you will interact with. Actively work to reduce your own ethnocentrism, that tendency to see your own culture as the standard or superior. Confront your stereotypes, recognize them as generalizations, not facts about individuals. Be mindful during interactions, pay attention. Avoid over-attribution. Don't automatically blame everything someone does on their culture. Recognize differences are real, but also look for common ground. And crucially, be willing to adjust your communication style.
Adaptability seems key.
It really is.
Wow. Okay. What a journey through the layers of human communication. I mean, from Aristotle worrying about speeches thousands of years ago to the nuances of a text message today, it's just so clear that communication is this continuous, incredibly complex, and just deeply human process. And powerful.
It really is. Which leads to a final thought, perhaps. If communication is, as our sources strongly suggest, inevitable, you can't not communicate, and it's irreversible.
Can't take it back once it's out there.
Exactly. And it's unrepeatable because everyone and everything is always changing. You can never have the exact same interaction twice. If all that's true, what does that actually mean for your very next conversation?
That's a heavy question. You can't unsay something. You can apologize, sure, but the message happened, and you can't step in the same communication river twice. So maybe the action is just a pause. Pausing before speaking or reacting. Thinking about the potential impact, the context, the other person's perspective, maybe their cultural background, or paying way more attention to the nonverbals, or really trying that empathic listening thing we talked about.
Could be any of those things. The challenge really is taking these ideas, these insights from our deep dive, and letting them actually change something, however small, in how you navigate your interactions from here on out. How will understanding perception biases change how you view a disagreement? How will knowing about listening stages affect your next important conversation?
Lots to think about. We really hope this exploration has given you some fresh perspectives, maybe some powerful tools to become an even more effective, maybe more mindful communicator in your own life. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.